Good evening, good evening. How everyone doing today? My name is Irma Jess. I'm here to give you a word on tonight, and we're gonna talk about the life in a dark cage. Now we know David had was running from here to there. He was running backwards and forwards in the cage, running from Saul. You know that no matter where you run at, no matter where you at, you can still worship God. You can still get some light in your stone. This when David had fled from Saul and his enemies in the cage. He's running from his enemies into a cage. Now he can pray to God no matter where you at. And so he wrote a lot of songs in that cage. Have mercy on me, my God. Have mercy on me, for in you I take refuge. I will take refuge in the shadow of your wings until the disaster had passed. And that's Psalm 57, 1 through 11. So David had found himself in a lonely, dark cage. Now who would stay in a cage? Why is this dark? They don't have anything to function with. But David, was in the cage, in the dark, worshiping God. He was hiding from King Saul in fear for his life and persuaded by thousands of his own countrymen. So he not only was running from Saul, he was running from enemies, he was running from his own son. So David was living in a cage time after time. Now his life was like a roller coaster of emotional, but he experienced his fear and turned it to faith. His fear had turned into faith. Terror had shifted to trust God. His emotional had him up and down. When you're emotional, it's up and down. Especially when you're going through so much. But David always returned to God and worshiped him even in a dark cage. Because David was close to God since he was a little boy. Remember he had to fight that giant. He had put all his confidence in God. So even if he dealing with Saul, running from Saul, no matter what he was at, he put all his trust in God. So that's why nothing happened to David, because David still had a calling on his life. And God was right there with him. Wherever David went, he protected him until he got in his seat, until he got in his position. Now, David had found life in his dark cage. Now, when he allowed all his enemy, all his emotion had turned to God. So he had sent from heaven and saved me, rebuking those who haughtily pursue me. God has sent forth his love and his faithfulness. Because see, God was still faithful and he was protecting David. Because see, he made a promise to David. He was a little boy. Remember, he was a little boy when he anointed David. But he have not got in position yet. So David recounted God's help to take his focus off himself, and place his focus on God. So as he was in that cage, he took his focus, off his problem and put his focus on God. I am in a mix of lions. I'm in a mix of lions. I am forced to dwell among the ravens and beasts. Men whose teeth are spare and arrows, whose tongue are sharp and sword. So David said, he has so many people behind him, so powerful, but they could not touch David. David didn't realize God was right there with him. God was with David the whole time. He had a calling on his life. God was protecting him, even if he didn't know God was protecting him. No matter how many enemies were behind David, they could not touch David. Now, David described his enemies as lions. He dealt with being criticized. Sometimes verbal cruelty can damage us badly than physical abuse. If you have low self-esteem and people criticize you with words, sometimes people take that to heart, than physical abuse. So David was not answering with hateful words. Now he talked with God about the accusation. So he was telling God everything people's criticizing him with. So be exalted, O God, above the heaven. Let your glory be over the earth. Now David sought out God will above his own trust in God. So they spread a net for my feet. So he's telling God, they spread a net for his feet. Digging a pit for him. Now I was bowed down in distress. They dig a pit in my path, but they have fallen themselves. But because that was God. That was messing with David. They was digging. And see, God know who digging the ditch. That's why you can he know who was digging the ditch. And David said they fell in it itself. David ain't made them fall in it. That was God protecting him the whole time. So the pit they dig for me, and the net which they hid is their own foot take. So my heart of God is stated in my heart is steadfast. Now I will sing and make music. Now God, David has sung. David had wrote many songs. And David can sing and he can dance. So the best defense is to praise God. So no matter what he was going through, his defense was praising God, worshiping God, And so awaken a soul, awaken herbs and lyrics. Now I will awaken the dawn. Now he was saying he go, but before it's get morning time. He was going to do these things. He was going to sing and he was going to praise God. Now, David had called out to his own soul, his musical instrument, to prepare a praise, before a new day began. Now, he wants to awaken dawn with his song honoring God faithfully. Now, he realized, at first he didn't realize that God was with him and protecting him. When he realized everybody just falling down all around him, and he know he's not doing it, he realized God's faithfulness. He realized that's God. That's God doing it. And so he wanted to make up, create a song before morning get here to honor God's faithfulness. Tell him thank you. So I will praise you, Lord, among the nation. I will sing of you among the people. Instead of David, spending sleepless nights like some of us. I'm one of them. Still of David, he spent his sleepless nights worrying about how he gonna do this and that. He trusted God and he believed. So just spending sleepless nights about what he cannot change. And that clue me when I'm talking about a lot of time we can't change our situation. But we worrying about it, and trying to see how we can change it. That's why I always say, but you, God, you the only one can change things. You can change this whole situation. Not my will, but your will. And so David realized he couldn't change anything. So David uses those wakeful hours to meditate on expressing gratitude. See, he wasted time worrying and sleepless nights. He wasted that time meditating and expressing gratitude. And see, I'm talking about me too and anybody else. A lot of time, we have to be grateful. Even if we find the smallest things, God is doing before he do the big thing. Because, God takes steps by step before he do the big things in our life. So we supposed to appreciate the small things that God is doing and be grateful. David realized how faithful God is. And David showed us how he turned his stress into gratitude. To God. Now he prays and he give God thanks. For great is your Lord reaching to heaven. Your faithfulness reaches to the sky. For as the heaven is high above the earth, so great is his mercy towards them that fear him. God, greatness and compassion. Be exalted, O God, above the heaven. Let your glory be over all the earth. Trust God and give thanksgiving. We have to trust God and give thanksgiving. And a lot of time, I put this stuff together. I acknowledge, some things that I need to be doing. You know, show gratitude. Trust God more and give him thanks. And so David had took his focus off of him and his problem and situation and put his focus towards God. And when he started doing that, he come up with songs and he come up with praise and worshiping and finding gratitude, to honor God. That's what David did in his spare time, and he meditate on God. Worshiping God wherever you may be at. Now David found light in his dark cage. And so we can find light in our storm. And I know I have. I've been in the top, I'm still is in the top storm, my trials and tribulation, oscillation. I've been finding light and sanctuary in my storm. God been my sanctuary, just like he was with the Israelites, traveling in the wilderness. And God still provide food for them, water for them. And he doing the same thing with me. It take long sometimes, especially when you don't know how to shut your mouth. And that's how the Israelites, sometimes I have to catch myself, man, I'm sounding like the Israelite. There was mumbling and complaining and will take long, but he still provide for them. But it take longer to get you what you need to get to by running your mouth. And sometimes it's just like the practice I put out before. And sometimes we can say something and then realize who we talking to and get quiet. Joe said no more. So David found light in the cage. He was going through so much. Half of his life he running from Saul. Running from Saul. And he remembered that God made a promise to him as a boy. He was anointed. But he wasn't there yet. And really he was in training. So a lot of time God put us in different situations. We don't be where we need to be at, and we feel like we're not qualified. But sometimes God puts you in a training situation. Preparing you for when. So David was preparing. David was in training under Saul. Even though he was experienced, and sometimes you can be experienced and but sometimes he was under Saul leadership, God was preparing him. And even though he ain't had time to be a leader from constantly running half of his life, God knew what he was doing when he had he waited 20 some years. Joseph waited 20 some years when God said he was going to be in charge, but the promise still came through. So that's all I have for you today. The light in a dark cage. No matter where you at, you can worship God. Pray to God. David sung and make music to God. He was showing so much gratitude. Thank you, because he realized when his enemies start falling behind, all around him, digging a ditch for him when they start falling, and he he's not the cause of it, so he realized it's God fighting this battle. David was protected. So many people was behind him, but none of them couldn't touch him. Even Saul ran behind him all his life, could not touch David, because God was protecting him until he got in his position. So that's all I have for you today. Light in the dark cave. No matter what you at, you can worship God. I'll see y'all on the next video. Have a blessing.